What's up everyone, Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have yet another collection update for you. Got a giant batch here for you, a lot of new releases, again trying to cover some of the 2021 releases that we haven't covered in reviews, as well as some cool little extra stuff that I picked up and like a pretty cool rare find. Also, got another one that was sent to me courtesy of a band. They just wanted me to go over it and they sent me a copy of their CD, so that's cool that bands are doing that now, and actually I really encourage that. So I mean, if you're friends with me on Facebook or you want to get a hold of me on YouTube, just hit me up in the comments or whatever, and yeah man, if you're willing to send me a CD, I'm more than willing to go over it for you. So with that, let's get into this pretty decent sized batch here. Ghostbath, Loather. This is the fourth album from this North Dakota-based depressive black metal act. I believe at one point they tried to convince the world that they were from China, and lo and behold, they're actually from North Dakota, I believe. And this is pretty much self-described on the album title here. This is some very depressing, bleak black metal, but very riffy, and lots and lots of great melodies on here. This is so sad that I don't think the extra weeping in the song Hide from the Sun was really necessary. You could feel the sadness. But they also had CJ from Thy Art Is Murder on there contributing some low growls, and he does a good job. Vocals on here are very cavernous anyway, and just drenched in sorrow. Like, this is really good at conveying how depressive it is. Production here is really solid. It's kind of more modern, but I have to say, like, it does a good job kind of conveying like kind of a raw feel to it. Like, the drums sound kind of modern, but everything else very reverb drenched, because you want the sadness to permeate every possible avenue the sound could travel, and they did that. There's a lot of cleaner melodies on here, even some breakdowns, and at times you get a little bit of that shoegaze, kind of black gaze feel. Like, for everyone that didn't necessarily like the last Death Heaven album, this might be a healthy substitute for it, because it definitely kind of brings in a lot of that atmosphere, and not just like a shoegazy atmosphere. Like, this is 100% black metal. Like, there's no getting around that. Overall, this is a solid release. This is actually my first experience really listening to the band. I've heard a lot of hype around these guys, and finally got around to picking this one up, and yeah, pretty much as advertised. This is the saddest thing that has ever sadded, and actually I don't mind going back to it. Like, it's bleak as hell, but it's really tuneful, and these songs are really well written. So yeah, if you have never jammed Ghostbath before, I would say this is a pretty solid place to start. So yeah, check it out. Kodot, Moss Grew on the Swords and Plowshares Alike. This is the 10th album from this avant-garde, ambient, doom, metal, something or other. I really don't know how to describe this. I actually have an album by theirs. I believe it was, let's see, Blue Lemon Sea Downward. I don't even know what that means, but that came out in 2008, and I checked it out, and then I didn't really get it, and then I went back and listened to it and said, this is very interesting, and I saw that they were coming out with a new album, so I picked this one up, and this is still really weird. I don't necessarily know how to describe this. You have lots of deep down-tuned guitars, lots of weird ambient synths, vocals that are kind of like a stream of consciousness, sort of shouting or rhythmic yelling. They kind of remind me of Skinny Puppy, how Ogre would do essentially that sort of style of vocals over their weird music. But I think that's kind of what the band's going for. They actually, I believe I read, they kind of pride themselves in being uncategorizable. You do get a lot of weird off-time drumming, kind of like syncopated breakdowns. It's just a very strange listen, but there's honestly some really catchy stuff, and I was like really just kind of engaged in this the entire time. Not only because it was super strange, but it's actually pretty damn good for what it is, which I don't know what it is, but I don't know if they know what it is. It's just Kodot, I guess. At their softest, it kind of reminds me of like Tool and Perfect Circle, except you did too much acid and now the trip's gone really dark and weird. It's kind of like that, especially the song Void and Vertigo, The Nature of Sacrifice. Something about that really kind of reminds me of just something Maynard would be involved in. I'm pretty sure this band wouldn't mind inviting him along for a song either. It just kind of seems weird enough for him to do. Yeah, this is some strange stuff. If you're looking for something very much off the beaten path of most things, I would strongly recommend checking this out. It's heavy and it's strange, and again, it doesn't fit in anywhere, and if you're looking for something like that, I recommend checking this out. Dead Soul Symphony, Mind Plague. This is the debut EP from this Wisconsin-based death thrash act. This is actually one that was sent to me by the band, actually by the drummer Andy Mully. Thank you very much for sending this to me. I got a flag of theirs and some stickers, I believe, in a package that was sent to me by a fan a while ago, and they sent me some stuff that included the other band that these guys are attached to, Beer Can Pentagram, which I still absolutely love that name. They sent me shirts for both. In fact, I am wearing the Dead Soul Symphony one right now. It's just kind of chilly down here, so the hoodie stays on. But they got a hold of me and asked me if I'd like to go over this band, and I gladly accepted. And this is, again, straight up death thrash, like very much attached to like Slayer, Possessed, but a little bit of like kind of Vader and Deicide energy in there too. Very aggressive, very raw. It has a like kind of flat out old school sound. Love the death metal chugs on the title track, and there's a really cool thrashy breakdown on Ash particularly. This is a really solid EP, and like it's high energy across the board. Really doesn't mess around with like atmosphere or anything like that. This is very much a bullet train listen of just aggression, and I kind of like that. Solid stuff. Thank you guys for sending me this. This is just kind of like the shit I love anyway. I love thrashy death metal. I kind of grew up on that, and this definitely kind of harks back to that. A little bit of the Martin Van Drunen kind of raw vocals too. I always love those. Recommend checking them out. I mean, if you're looking for something just hyper aggressive and in a short dose, check this out. Centenary, Death, the Final Frontier. This is the second album from this Detroit-based death metal act. Actually, my good buddy Chris Grant actually interviewed these guys not too long ago on Metalomania, and I saw these guys open for Deicide, which is where I first heard of them, and I bought their first album, so saw this in a distro, had to snag it, and this is just raw, nasty, kind of punky death metal. It kind of reminds me of, like, what if Exhumed just got super hardcore into HM2 death metal, or Matt Harvey formed an HM2 band, which honestly, I'm thinking that's kind of surprising he hasn't, because he's formed a band for like every other kind of music he loves. But yeah, very much along that. In fact, they call themselves Detroit Chainsaw Metal, and that's pretty accurate, including the chainsaw samples. These guys love horror, and they love fast, aggressive HM2, like Swedish style death metal, and it's just a fun listen. Production, I think, is a little bit better than their first album. The HM2 tone they have is very sizzly. Like, actually, it kind of reminds me more of like Rotten Sound in terms of their grindcore approach to that tone. And the vocals, I think, have a little bit more variety. There's a little bit more high-low switch off this time. There's a good balance of like high-octane thrashy death metal, D-beat, and some solid grooves on Strangled by the Night. And I have to give them some serious credit for sampling the show Kolchak, The Night Stalker. I love that show. My mom used to watch all the time. Darren McGavin just being pretty much, it's like Supernatural before Supernatural was a thing. It was a weird show, but I like the fact that they actually sampled that. And this actually includes their EP from 2017, Where No Lives Matter, and that also has some filthy stuff on there. Definitely a bit more raw than the stuff that is on the full length here, but also really good. If you guys love HM2 and you like your death metal just dirty sounding and loaded with obscure horror samples, and honestly just to be pure fucking fun, then I strongly recommend checking this one out. This was a ball to listen to, much like their first one. A little bit better produced, and Kolchak samples, dude. That's awesome. Check it out. Hexorcist, Evil Reaping Death. This is the debut album from this Miami-based old school death metal, kind of death thrash. It's very thrashy. That's pretty much the main point here. It's very high octane, very high speed. And back to like kind of samples and intros, the opening intro I had to just write down a comment about, because it's very driven by horns. Like, I think it was kind of going for like, you know, like late 60s, early 70s horror flick, but it kind of almost came across as like late 60s, early 70s cop show. But at the same time, it was really interesting. And when this album explodes, it goes right into, like, again, very thrashy old school death metal. It's very raw sounding, lots of like kind of galloping blasts. Like, it kind of reminds me a bit of early Sepultura, like Morbid Visions, or like if Incantation was way more thrashy. This whole thing is fast, aggressive, kind of blasphemous. Denouncing the Immaculate is an absolute banger of a song. I really love the energy on here, though I think some of the songs kind of run together a bit, but it's kind of a fun run together. Like, again, kind of that Bullet Train feel where it's just kind of a non-stop, like, hyper-aggressive listen. And because they are kind of like, I guess you could say punky and kind of minimalist in terms of like, there's not a tremendous amount of dynamics, but the raw energy kind of makes up for it. I don't know, it makes for a really good, interesting listen. If you're into just like kind of fast, old school death metal, kind of like blended a little bit with thrash, but definitely a lot of sort of evil atmosphere to it, or like an evil, foreboding feel, definitely check this out. It's a pretty solid fucking album. Bellacor, Coherence. This is the 5th album from this Australian-based melodic death metal act. I became a huge fan of these guys over the course of their last 2 albums. Lots of like pretty much hype around them in terms of like just being a new face of melodic death metal. This is the kind of melodic death metal that I really get into. This is very somber and very dark. Now I gotta say, these guys kind of border on prog a little bit. The first track and the last track both clock over 10 minutes and both have a lot of dynamics, lots of movements. This is very similar to like Dark Tranquillity or Insomnium. Lots of keyboards, lots of lush atmosphere, great like high power, like kind of at the gates of your wrist, but also tons of melody. Lots of really cool clean passages and great acoustic melodies all across this album. The vocals on here are really interesting. Like, it's pretty much just a straightforward growl, but there's a lot of like bellowed or growled spoken word. I do like the fact that they skipped any sort of clean vocals on here. That's actually kind of refreshing. Now, I will say, this is a long listen, and sometimes it does feel a little long-winded, but for the most part, you're being greeted to just great songwriting, and honestly, it's worth jamming all the way through. To this point, granted, I only have the last 2 albums on this one. I really haven't heard anything bad from these guys. This is, again, the kind of melodic death metal that I really get into. It's dark, foreboding, kind of melancholy and sullen, and it has so much to offer just in terms of like musicianship too. Excellent release from these guys. Strongly recommend checking this out. We were going to review it, but we kind of got bogged down with other releases. And yeah, here it is now. I love it. This is a killer album. Not sure if it's going to make the year-end list, but it's definitely an honorable mention at least if it doesn't. So even if it doesn't make the year-end list, know that this is a solid release. And if you're looking for some killer melodic death metal, this is it. So yeah, check it out. Knocked Loose, A Tear in the Fabric of Life. This is the surprise EP that just recently came out from Knocked Loose. Kentucky-based hardcore act, kind of metalcore, almost kind of deathcore in some spots, but I'd say hardcore is kind of the main feel on this. My brother-in-law actually saw these guys open for Gojira, and I asked him to pick up this album for me if he saw it at their stand. Luckily it was there, and holy shit, this is heavy. Like, this is possibly even heavier than the stuff that was on their last album, A Different Shade of Blue, which I was a huge fan of. The guitar tone in here is just aggressive. I mean, it's so damn chunky. And the production here, while maybe a little bit compressed, I think just screams heavy. And the atmosphere in here is a little bit unsettling. I gotta be honest. Like, it's like these weird little breathers in between a giant panic attack, because this is raging like pretty much at all times, and most good hardcore is going to be raging the entire time. There's these little pauses. I believe there's like kind of a part where he just whispers the title of the EP before exploding into another pulverizing breakdown. I can't remember which track it is, but there is a part, I think towards the end of it, where this whisper comes in and essentially says, everything's going to be all right, you'll be fine, or something to that effect. I didn't feel that way. That voice did not convey any sort of like sense of like security or comfort at all. It actually kind of creeped me out a little bit. This is just a caustic listen. And I mean, Different Shade of Blue was, very caustic itself. I think this even dials up the heaviness even more. There are maybe some slight changes in here. I think this is a little bit more atmospheric. There's a little bit more like death metal riffing. My only knock against this is maybe the vocals. I think sometimes they're just a little too high pitched in terms of that scream, but that is the dude's register. And I mean, I've listened to tons of hardcore bands that do that, so it's not really that much of a knock. It's just, I don't know, like some low growls to break it up a little bit more would be nice. But either way, this is a super aggressive, dark EP, and I really dig it. I would not mind seeing these guys live. I would not mind seeing more hardcore like this, because I'm still an old school hardcore fan, like all those Victory Records years. And parts of this kind of remind me of that. Other parts of it remind me of a lot of other stuff that is like more current stuff in metal and hardcore and metalcore and all that shit. But either way, this is just heavier than hell. And if you're looking for just that, check this out. Cancer, Sins of Mankind. I got the other 2 reissues. I saw this one. I might as well, because the first 3 Cancer albums are awesome, underrated death metal in my opinion. And I didn't really need this. Again, this one isn't even a 2-discer. It's just the album remastered. But holy shit, it's such a damn good album. This is after James Murphy left the band. Obviously, this is, you know, post Death Shall Rise. But holy shit, this is a super underrated album as well. A little bit more groove to it. I think the songwriting is a little bit more dynamic on here. But, I mean, Death Shall Rise is such a damn good album, but I think this is almost just as good. Again, I didn't need it. Already on this album. I've jammed it a dozen times. I'm going to jam it a dozen more times because I got a new copy that sounds, you know, pretty much like the other remastered copy, but I don't care because I got this one. So, yeah. Reissues are fun. Sometimes I don't need them, but sometimes I just want them, and that's why I got it, because Cancer rules. So yeah, if you've never jammed this album and you love old school 90s death metal, holy shit, you're missing out on a gem. You should check this out immediately. So yeah, check it out. Cystectomy, Deprive to Hollowness. It's the debut album from this international-based brutal death metal act, and features members of Reptilium, Tortured, Facelift, Deformation, and a bunch of other bands that I don't necessarily know, because I'm not like the biggest brutal death metal fan or like slam fan, and this unfortunately kind of echoes all the reasons why I'm not. While this does have some killer riffs and some pummeling grooves and some giant slams, it comes down to the vocals again. The vocals are just that, you know, drain, clog, sort of like clearing sound, just the deep gurgle. I don't even know if he's saying words, really. I mean, it sounds like he doesn't really need to, because all of them just go like that. So, I don't know. Musically, I mean, it has some cool parts to it, like, again, big slams, big grooves, there's some fun riffs, but it's kind of all the same riffs, and the songs are kind of indistinguishable in terms of, like, you know, they don't have a lot of elements they bring in. They just want to make this as raw and heavy as possible, and, you know, mission accomplished, this is heavy as fuck. I don't quite get the epic sort of, like, synths and such that are in the last track, Witness of the Cataclysm. At that point, I just don't know why that was there, because the rest of the album is just straightforward, just gurgle, guts, puke, chug, riff, blast beat, that. And then you have that extra part at the end, and I don't know, it kind of was like a head scratcher. But it's not really my thing. That doesn't mean it wouldn't be yours. I mean, if you're a brutal death and slam fan and you like your vocals gurgly as hell, I recommend checking this out. This is heavier than fuck, I can definitely say that. It's just really not my thing, but I'd still say check it out. Again, brutal death metal fans, this might be your new favorite band. You might already know about this band, but yeah, check it out. That's pretty much all I got here. Evil Spell, Padre, Vostro, which I believe means your father, and by I believe, I did look it up. This is their third album, came out this year on Blasphemous Records. I had never heard of this band, but I saw them advertised as Black and Thrash, and I love Black and Thrash, so that was enough of a reason for me to check it out, and this is definitely Black and Thrash. This is really aggressive, very fast Black and Thrash with very maniacal vocals. Like, he sounds like he should be cackling at some points, but he is just shrieking maniacally and yelling, and it's just kind of great for it. It kind of gives it this fun, campy edge. and then you mix in all those just wild kind of like Slayer, early Creator kind of riffs. This is just a high energy listen throughout. There's loads of nods to like Bathory, Celtic Frost, definitely a lot of Show No Mercy era Slayer. The riffs on the title track are flat out amazing, like super catchy. And some interesting song titles like Antisocial Satan. Maybe he just doesn't like possessing people anymore. It's just like, oh, it's kind of a burden. I don't want to go up there. It's just people, and they're all fucking nuts right now. I get it. The only thing I thought was kind of odd on here was the song Necrology, which is pretty much all pipe organs, like creepy, gothic, like old Hammer films with Dracula, you know, Phantom of the Opera organs. And it's a 4-minute track. I thought it was just kind of an intro and was going to lead in, and it turns out it's the entire track. Like there's some other noises in there, but mostly it's just the pipe organs. I don't know. It was kind of an odd, like weird break in the album, but overall this was just packed with great riffs, and it was a lot of fun. And I don't like the fact that the last track ends on some of the most ear-bleeding noise ever, but I don't know, maybe they're just trolling their listeners. But overall, this was fun. I'm glad I just kind of picked this one up on a whim because I love Black and Thrash. Like that was just enough for me to get it, and I found another band that I like, and I definitely want to check out more by them. So yeah, if you love Black and Thrash and you're willing to take a gamble on a band you've never heard of, then let this be the band you've never heard of. Evil Spell. Check them out. Nocturnal. Serpent Death. This is the 4th album from this German Black and Thrash act. A little bit of a theme here. Got some Black and Thrash. And to add to that theme, this is also a band I'd never heard of. I literally bought it on the fact that I saw it was Black and Thrash and the cool album cover. Sometimes that still works. That's how I bought albums as a teenager. So, I mean, this is proof that it works because this was really good once again. This one's different than Evil Spell. Like, it's a little bit more melodic, and I think it leans a little bit more heavily towards the thrash side. It has a lot of, like, kind of that old German thrash sound, so, like, early Sodom, early Creator, but mix that in with, of course, Slayer, Possess, Sarcophago, I would say, is in there, and kind of similar to Hellripper, too, in terms of more modern bands that sound like older bands. The production on here especially kind of gives you those, like, mid to late 80s vibes. It's very raw, very analog sounding. The vocals kind of have that sort of German thrash sound where they're kind of raw and ghastly, but every now and then you'll get like a high pitch yeah or whatever they do. I can't do it. I don't have that range. But it kind of reminds me a bit of like bands like Vulture now. It's just fun. It's just a super fun album to listen to. And again, there's a lot more melody on this than, you know, Evil Spell. This is got a lot of cool, like, classic sounding thrash hooks to it. And there's even a little bit of punk in here. The song Bleeding Heaven is pretty much a punk track. The one thing that I really loved about this was, again, that sort of old school production. This kind of reminded me of when I first was really getting into, like, more extreme metal. Like, you know, even the reasoning behind me buying it was like, it's got a big scary monster demon on it, and it's got a cool logo. I'm gonna buy it. Same reasoning when I was a teenager. I would do that all the time, and I found a lot of cool stuff that way. And the overall sound, again, the production, it's, I don't know, kind of like tied to my teenage years a little bit, even though this is brand new. This came out this year. This is a lot of fun. I really dig this. This is a cool throwback. It does not sound like anything modern whatsoever, and I kind of like it for that reason. That and the killer riffs, of course. Solid album. Recommend checking them out. I'm definitely going to check out more of their stuff in the future. I'm just going to have to hunt it down and see what I can find. But yeah, if you like Black and Thrash, and especially like it a little bit more on the thrashy side, I strongly recommend checking this one out. Order, The Gospel. This is the second album from this Norwegian black metal / black and death metal act. Metal Archives had death metal in there too. I definitely heard way more black metal. But this features Anders Odden of Cadaver, and also features Messiah and Mannheim, ex-Mayhem members, and this is very just kind of raw black metal. Honestly, I tried to look for the death metal aspects just because it said there was death metal to it. There are some riffier, chuggier moments, namely in the opening track, or after you get past the intro, Rise. There's definitely some chuggy tracks that kind of scream more death metal. but most of this is definitely more along the lines of black metal, and it's like a very raw kind of minimalist black metal, like very punky, kind of I don't know, like not later Dark Throne, but definitely like kind of the hate them period of Dark Throne. Definitely some Mayhem, like Death Crush era, so it has like kind of a punky sort of sound to it. But it's also kind of thrashy, kind of like Immortal and Impaled Nazarene. The vocals on here are insanely harsh. Messiah puts in a hell of a performance. I'm pretty sure it cost him a little bit of larynx blood being sprayed everywhere, because he worked his vocal cords over, at least it sounds like it. Now I gotta be honest, like a lot of this stuff kind of started feeling very samey after a while. Like again, it's very raw, kind of minimalist. It kind of just sticks with one thing. I like the performances in here, but sometimes I think the drums sounded maybe just like a little bit off in the background. And that kind of makes it sound more like a live performance, but I don't know, honestly, I mean, it's good. It just didn't really grab me very much, but I still enjoyed it. So it's kind of one of those like floating in the middle things, but pretty solid find. I just kind of picked this up on a whim and I saw who was in it. I was like, well, I'm definitely interested. And I have not jammed their first album, so I don't know if this is an improvement or this is them slipping a bit. So kind of reserving judgment there. But I would say if you're a fan of raw black metal and, thrashy riffs, definitely check this out. This was an interesting listen for sure. The vocal performance again is just nuts on it, but kind of nuts in a good way. But yeah, if any of that appeals to you, I recommend checking it out. Pretty fun listen. First, Fragment, Gloire Eternelle, or I'm probably butchering that. But this is the second album from this Quebec-based technical / progressive / neoclassical as fuck death metal band. This is some insanely proggy stuff. This is their first album in 5 years. I actually have their first album, and I kind of wondered what happened to these guys because they were so fiercely talented. Like, these guys do not hold back. And holy shit, it's kind of odd and tech death for me to say the bassist is the one that steals the show on this. The bass licks on here, I mean, it's all fretless, and God, they're beautiful. Like, he has like lead runs on his bass that are just absolutely amazing. Now, this again, very neoclassical, very technical as hell. So, I mean, definitely along the lines of bands like Gorod. I mean, Archspire's new album, I have to compare a little bit, but this is just maybe to another level than Archspire, or at least in kind of a different category, whereas Archspire definitely has neoclassical elements. There's a lot of like straight up death metal, straight up kind of brutal death metal to them. And they have that kind of high speed insanity with the vocals and the guitars and the drum, everything, literally everything in Archspire. These guys kind of go for just lavish technical movements. There's even an 18+ minute song on here, in L, which is broken up into 6 movements. And it is just a blur of very pretty, but very technical and kind of, I don't know, difficult to listen to. I like this. I think the technical elements are jaw-dropping on here. But sometimes it kind of just bleeds into like a lot of wankery. And I mean, it's tech death. Wank is going to be involved. But this kind of borders on too much sometimes. Like there's just too much going on. When they actually slow it down and break it up, like the opening track, the title track, I think is one of the best tracks on here because it has a really interesting flow to it. Like there's really cool extra percussion, acoustic guitar melodies, but some of these just kind of go full bore for not a single riff, just noodling. And while I like that, I kind of need riffs. That's kind of my thing. It's just kind of a personal preference. And it does run a bit long. Like this is over 70 minutes and I think it could have been trimmed down. I actually watched Metal Meltdown and he kind of echoed the same things that I think about this too, is you could trim this down because Archspire wrote an album kind of similar and it's half the length. And honestly, it feels more concise, more just put together to be in your face and memorable. This can be a bit difficult to latch onto, though it's really good. So I like this. I'm just not that into it. This is going to take probably a lot more repeat listens, but I think this is just very impressive. Like, how the hell can you not be impressed by some of the playing on here? It just doesn't make for memorable songs for me. But yeah, if you're a technical death metal fan, strongly recommend checking it out. This is super impressive. I think this is, at least on a technical standpoint, a little bit better than their first album, though I think their first album was maybe a little bit more concise. Either way, I like this band. It's just a lot to digest, but I strongly recommend diving into this and get lost in the flurry because, I mean, it's still really fun to listen to. So check it out. Monolord, Your Time to Shine. It's the 5th album from this Swedish stoner doom act. I definitely kind of walk both kind of categories there. I have been a fan of these guys for quite some time. I think it was around Veneer, which definitely one of my favorite albums by them. These guys create some of the most ungodly, heavy, stoner doom guitar and bass tones ever. Like, somehow it is warm and fuzzy, but also crunchier than hell. And I'll be honest, I think this is one of their best albums. I was a big fan of No Comfort. Their last one, I think, is amazing. I think this one, they crafted possibly some more memorable songs. There's maybe just a little bit more to the dynamics, and I kind of like that they really pushed the doomy aspects, especially on I'll Be Damned and the title track. Both of those really kind of echo a lot of stuff in like Trouble and St. Vitus. The psychedelic break at the end of the title track is so just, I don't know, cosmic and weird. I don't know. I really like that kind of like, you know, drive through the desert, nighttime, there's like lizards and shit out there, or it's just the peyote kicking in. I like that sort of feel in a record. And when you couple it with those heavy, heavy riffs, it has this just sort of odd vibe to it. It's heavy and it's chill at the same time. Like you could just sit back and relax to it, but also you can just kind of bang your head, albeit pretty slowly. Like this is not like Funeral Doom slow, but this is definitely just kind of like a laid back sort of Sabbath groove. And well, these guys do not hide the fact that they worship at the Sabbath altar, and well, who shouldn't? I will say, I think an improvement on here is the vocals. The vocals actually have some better vocal hooks on this one, I noticed. This definitely makes year-end lists difficult because I want to include this. I don't know if I have room. It's kind of on the fence. I need to jam it more, but initial reaction is, damn, this might be one of their best albums. So yeah, if you're a Monolord fan or you're just looking for something stonery and doomy at the same time, and you're a big fan of like Sleep and Black Sabbath, holy shit, literally get all of Monolord stuff if you love that sort of sound, but this would not be a bad place to start, so check it out. So I got a DVD. I have a copy now of Entombed, Monkey Puss, live in London in 1992. I actually have this live album, and I saw the DVD actually at a local record store. I was like, well, you know what, might as well have the companion. And I'd actually watched footage of this on YouTube years ago, and I was like, well, I know it's an awesome performance. I have the audio, and I've seen the video. Why not actually just own it? And since we're ranking Entombed, why not have this legendary set on DVD as well? This also includes videos, too, for Left Hand Path, Stranger Aeons, Hollow Man, Wolverine Blues. That was the first Entombed video I ever saw, and Night of the Vampire. So, yeah, got a lot of cool stuff on here. This is just an incredible set. I mean, literally everything from the first 2 albums. So if you love just the death metal side of Entombed, that is what you're getting here. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I just wanted it. I saw it, and Entombed fucking rules. And yeah, check it out. And then finally, we got a big one and a kind of a huge find. We have the Samhain, or Samhain, if you were going to pronounce it right, I guess. I don't know how this band actually pronounced it, literally, but this is their box set from 2000. This is literally all their albums, plus a live album and some other stuff, which I might as well go into it. I guess it's been kind of difficult actually finding their albums. I guess there's a lot of bootlegs out there because I believe Glenn owns all the rights, and I guess they don't plan on reissuing it. But yeah, this comes with a comic. I am not opening this because when I did, I mean, granted, it's very short. It's very sexually graphic, and I don't want to get in trouble with that. But yeah, we got I guess Zombie Danzig there, and then we got Samhain. You know, this is obviously the symbol that would be associated more with Danzig. This is kind of where Danzig started. Like, this was post Misfits, pre Danzig, but it was kind of a transitional band, and literally you can hear it kind of shift from like punk, horror rock to more metal later on. They only put out 4 albums before breaking up or essentially becoming Danzig. I know Chuck Biscuits was in there. I think most of the members kind of carried over into Danzig. I'm not the biggest Danzig fan, but I know this was a collector's item, and I've been meaning to actually jam Samhain, so this was kind of a good introduction to it. We got the very skinny booklet here with all sorts of pictures of the band, and, you know, some interesting artwork. And then all the albums here. Yeah, we have Initium, Unholy Passion, better keep that covered. November Coming Fire, and then Final Descent, and this was the live one from 85 to 86. And to really date this, and this did come out in 2000, this is VHS. Look at that. There is a relic from the past. I don't even own a VCR anymore, so I don't know how I'm gonna watch that unless I go buy one. But I saw this, someone had brought it in along with some, you know, Misfits vinyl. I'm not a vinyl collector, otherwise I probably would have got them, because I believe the Earth AD one was possibly a first print. But I saw the Samhain box set and was like, you know what? Let's just get everything right here. And honestly, it's pretty cool. Like, again, I'm not the biggest Danzig fan. I'm more of a Misfits fan, but this kind of fits somewhere right between. And honestly, like some of the more thrashy sections on, especially the last album, I kind of really dug. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna dive into this band a little bit more, you know, get a better understanding for them. Because eventually, I mean, we're gonna have to do like a Danzig ranking at some point, just because I know Danzig's still pretty damn popular, or at least has a big cult fan base. But this was still pretty damn cool, and I was super happy to find this. You know, I usually don't pick up box sets, but this one's relatively rare, and yeah, pretty cool stuff. All right, that knocks out another collection update. I am slowly working on building the next pile. There's still more stuff coming. I know there's another band that sent me stuff that just hasn't arrived yet, so it's a lot of waiting at the mailbox and seeing what arrives. I definitely am going to cover more 2021 releases in collection updates in terms of like stuff we could review. We just don't have time for, because at least November is not as loaded as October, but there's still a lot of stuff coming out, and there's a lot of stuff we definitely look forward to going over. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We're also on Patreon if you'd like to help us out there. There will be a link down below. Also, if you are interested in shirts, we still have some available. If you would like one, hit us up on thrallsmetal@gmail.com. Send us a message, put shirts in it, and we will get back to you and hopefully sell you a shirt. So with that, I thank you all once again, because you were all fucking awesome. Thank you for getting us this far. It's just been absolutely amazing. We're on the verge of 8,000 subscribers, and that just seems ridiculous, because honestly, 1,000 seemed ridiculous. But thank you guys so much for getting us there. And with that, I will catch you later.